You know how in movies there's always the idiot in the movie and they're just there to move the plot line ahead, as in there's a giant obvious meteor coming towards Earth and they're like, hey John, there's a meteor coming towards Earth because you didn't see it. That could really affect us in this next scene, and it's only there to tell the schmuck. So thanks guys, thanks for that. Hey guys, welcome to Idea Drop. Usually it's Kendall and I pontificating about fun things and businesses we should start, but today it's just three men sitting abreast and talking about our fame and our rise to it and how we've done it and all the wonderful lessons we learned along the way. And right before we got on the call, we were talking about how we get trolled on our social media accounts and people just slam us. And so what were you saying? You don't actually read your comments, or you do, or what does that work?
I try to not, it stresses me out, and I found that when I get into the comments most of the time, it makes me less likely to share.
Post again.
Yeah. Okay.
And so usually I'll have my assistant go through, do the first cut.
Yeah.
And if somebody has a question, a follow, I did something on Twitter that kind of popped off a couple of days ago about my wife had cancer and the cancer journey. Right. And that, I don't think anyone really hated on, it's really hard to troll that.
Yeah, that's good.
But most business stuff that if you're talking about business in any way, or how to make money or whatever, if I talk about how I quit practicing law and I sold a business or whatever, I've found, if my assistant will go through, and then if somebody has a legit follow-up question, she'll just ask it to me verbally, and I'll tell her what to write, because otherwise I start silencing myself, and it's and I put way less out because the hate's not worth it.
Dude, that's good. Do you? So I got into this bad thing of starting to troll people who would troll me. I would go on the app and I'd see people who are they're just assholes. A lot of them are.
Yeah.
And so I would just be an asshole back, but in a way that makes them look so bad. I want to see if I can think of an example, but it is so much fun to do. However,
except you're doing it in our brand name.
Yeah,
and then
it's a slippery slope.
Is that Dustin? Is that Kendall? Is that the
I
admin? Is that the social manager?
That's the danger, because we share a brand, and I feel like I'm one notch more edgy than you. Maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me on that, but I would probably say things you wouldn't say.
Cocaine jokes.
I love cocaine jokes. They're the best jokes. How do
The
you think
irony was I was
day,
the one who just made that, right?
That's great. That's fantastic.
So Raleigh, here's how the show normally goes. We're trying to be a little bit transparent and creative on the opportunities that other people could hop on, act on, if they're trying to quit their day jobs, or maybe they're in the entrepreneur grind right now, but pivots are a real thing. And so obviously the type of person who is interested in what else is happening out there, what's trending, what are the different ways I could make money right now, they kind of get addicted to all the ways, right? The challenge becomes focus on something, build it, scale it, and actually make it pencil. But the first step oftentimes is knowing how to differentiate what is a really shitty business you should never start, and what is a decent one that the mechanics are there, and with the right, hustle and the right person, this one can make money. So a lot of our discussions around that, I often play the critical part. I think that idea is bullshit. So you're welcome to be critical or optimistic today. And Dustin and I will take turns telling you why you're wrong.
Sure. I err on the side.
Or we'll pitch you ideas.
I err on the side of critical, typically.
Yeah.
That's
hence the law practice.
You guys are
background.
assholes, and I'm just the well-wisher, and I think that everyone should try everything all the time.
Dustin still believes that being an entrepreneur is worth it. And
I don't know. Actually, hold on. But you're okay. So Raleigh, I don't know you. For context, I've never met you. He told me that we were hosting you, and so I typically don't look up anybody that Kendall gets as guests, because I like to get to know you on the pod.
Sure.
But you do mergers and acquisitions, right?
So I was a lawyer, and I did mergers and acquisitions in 2015. I practiced M&A law for about a year. And I hated it. And so I tried a couple things while I was practicing law to quit. The thing that ultimately took off for me was there was a Market Watch article that in 2015 is called The Unbelievably Lucrative Business of Escape Rooms. You can go and look at escape rooms in your area, and you can look at how many bookings that they have, because typically they want you to reserve it in advance. And so every single morning when I would go to my law firm office, before I would start going into deal diligence or working on a purchase and sale agreement, I would pull up all of the escape rooms in my area and just see how many bookings they had for the day. And I had a spreadsheet of every escape room business. So apologies for anyone who was trying to get a deal done in 2015 through some of the law firms I was at, because I'm sure I screwed the pooch on some of the diligence things because I was trying to, get my escape room business off the ground.
Quit.
Yeah. And
I think that's the leader of that company's job, not your job. They sent a shitty culture that made you look elsewhere.
Yeah, the partners, I mean, as a first year associate, you're not doing like groundbreaking stuff, and there's 3 or 4 layers above you before anything ever gets inked.
Right.
So I'm sure it's fine, but I don't really care. And so anyway, that's how I ultimately left, as I started an escape room brand with my brother and a guy that was working at KPMG. The three of us kind of jumped in together in summer of 2016, and then we ultimately went from escape rooms, and then we started buying and building trampoline parks, axe throwing businesses, bars. That grew to seven locations, called Williams Entertainment Group. And we sold the majority of those locations at the end of 2021.
What did you sell? What made you do that?
A couple things. Right before COVID, the operator in the escape room business kind of decided that he wanted to do something else. That was the KPMG accountant guy. He was supposed to operate those businesses, and he kind of felt like he was ready to move on to the next thing. And so we bought him out. And it was kind of left to my brother and I. He's a former Goldman guy. I was a former M&A lawyer. And so like, it felt like there was such a thin layer between us and the operations of the escape room business, particularly, that I wanted to.
You didn't want to operate that for the next 10 years?
Yeah. And as we had started to grow the business, just building escape rooms and building trampoline parks, it's a very non-scalable, like it's very time intensive. We had welders and electricians, and we had this whole staff of people, and it kind of turned into this thing that neither one of us really expected it to be. And so we were doing a lot of stuff. I was flying out to old abandoned Albertsons and abandoned grocery stores and dealing with GCs and city permitting. And it just kind of turned into this thing that we felt like the opportunity was such that we didn't want to miss out on it. So we kind of like forced our way into scaling the business, but we also felt like we needed to be involved in every part of the process. So we didn't build the right team. We self-funded it. And so we wanted to do everything cheaply. We just got burnt out basically. And we didn't want to grow. And so I wanted to figure out the exit strategy before the numbers started to tank. And the people that have bought the businesses, like we ended up kind of splicing them off piece by piece. The escape room business we sold to somebody, some of the trampoline parks we sold to people. Like it took multiple transactions. It wasn't just one check from one buyer. And those people have all done great with the locations and the brands. They're much more operationally focused than my brother and I ever were. And so they're good businesses. I just, I felt like I wanted to do the escape room thing simply because it wasn't practicing law. That was like the only criteria, is like, can I make money not practicing law? And it had turned into something bigger than I'd expected it to, but it also, I couldn't see myself building an entertainment empire for the decade that was to come. And so I was like, let's get out while we can. And then that was its own process.
Dude, how long was that? What was the whole process beginning to end?
We started the escape room business in 2016. Both of us had been involved in a trampoline park starting in 2011. So, we were operational in those businesses for about a decade. I went to practice law in the middle of that, but we were full time working on it from 2016 to 2022. We still have 2 parks that we're like in negotiations with right now to sell the last 2 parks that we have. But we got serious about selling. I mean, it was probably a 2-year process of like really dealing with potential buyers and, vetting them, going through negotiations. So it was probably a 2-year process, and we were just selling them off along the way, doing a couple transactions a year.
Dang. All right.
I'm so curious how you value something like that has, I know there's many ways to value it, but who better to talk to than you about the various ways to value the trampoline park versus, right. Maybe no one better on M&A of trampoline parks and escape room businesses and axe throwing. So I'm thinking a few things in the back of my head. So, and because you had several, the group had several, and then you pieced them off one at a time. I'm hearing the operator of each one was not a strength. So it's not an acqui-hire. The margins are good enough because you guys grew, right? And you self-funded. So the margins are good enough. I'm hearing like a lot of, so you kind of have predictable charts and graphs that show busyness, you peak times, maybe a buyer can do some price adjustments. They can mark this, 15% higher without losing customers maybe, or they're going to come in. But then as far as it's not like really operating itself. So the buyer has to come in and operate. It is, but it isn't, right? But they're going to have to come in and do a lot is my point. How do you even go? Do you just try to do it off of EBITDA, or EBITDA is not favorable for the seller in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, it was the trampoline park business and the escape room business were pretty different. Trampoline parks, you can look out and it's a 30 or 40,000 square foot space, and you can see how expensive that thing was to build. And they're the asset. If you're looking at just like the assets, if you haven't depreciated them, which we would, people know that to build it, it's going to cost $2 to $3 to $4 million, kind of depending on how white glove of a build service that you want to have. Right. And the escape room business was different because you can go and look at an escape room business that is maybe operating out of a Class C office space that cost $25,000 to build. Right. Or you can go to an escape room business that's in Orlando
90 cents a square foot.
Yeah, you can go and like we spent in the escape room business, we would spend 60 or 70 grand per experience to get them built. Whereas kind of the industry standard was back then was 5 or 10 grand. So we had like
you did it
high production value.
Awesome.
We had,
that's awesome.
Yeah, we had like actors in every single room, like with the experience, we tended towards more like scary experiences because we thought it was cooler than like lame, like treasure hunting experiences that you kind of go to. Most escape rooms are kind of lame. And so the escape room business was mostly, valued off of that business. When we sold it was doing like 600 grand. We sold 2 locations. And between the 2 of them, it was doing like 600 grand in free cash flow, EBITDA, seller discretionary earnings, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And
actually, let me pause you there for our listeners and for Dustin. Tell Dustin what the difference between seller's discretionary earnings is and EBITDA. He knows what EBITDA is roughly.
So EBITDA is. Well, I won't. So EBITDA is basically the, pre-tax earnings where you get to add back depreciation and amortization, and seller discretionary earnings. The big difference between seller discretionary earnings and EBITDA is typically if the owner is working in the business, drawing a salary, and it's basically like, it used to be called owner benefit. So like seller discretionary earnings is like, what is everything that the seller is generating from this business and making from this business, that he's using. So like if you were to step into his shoes, what is the business?
You get that cash.
What's the benefit that you can derive from this business? And EBITDA is slightly different than that. Typically, EBITDA would be a lower number than seller discretionary earnings, which is why a broker will tell you seller discretionary earnings over an EBITDA number.
All right.
So Dustin, if we buy you a Tesla Model X from Idea Drop,
It's nice of you.
and then we sell Idea Drop on Raleigh's platform for selling media assets, then somebody's gonna have to look at your Model X and value that into the.
This is great.
into
You
the
know how
multiple.
like in movies, there's always the idiot in the movie, and they're just there to move the plot line ahead. As in, like, there's a giant, obvious meteor coming towards Earth, and they're like, "Hey, John, there's a meteor coming towards Earth because you didn't see it. That could really affect us in this next scene, and it's only there to tell the schmuck." So thanks, guys. Thanks for that. But real quick, Raleigh, dude, is running an escape room fun? Like, is it a legitimately like, yeah, I actually enjoyed this business, or would you go back and say, no, it sucks. It was just expensive, but profitable.
I think if you enjoy that type of stuff, the guys that bought us out of that business are in the haunted house business, and so they enjoy kind of production value, theatrical stuff, dealing with makeup and younger kids that are wanting to, like, if you enjoy doing that type of stuff, then I think you could enjoy it. I'm more built to run like a private equity firm. So it wasn't I enjoyed the learning process of, I hadn't really done heavy construction to that point, and like dealing with, you're dealing, I call them carnies. You're dealing with a bunch of carnies.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like,
that adds up.
Like the builders are carnies because they like are working on movie set production stuff, and like the workers are kind of carnies, and they're into like the zombie thing and the whole production value stuff. And you're just kind of dealing with if you enjoy that type of stuff, you would love running an escape room.
Dude, I do enjoy
business because it's
carnies.
kind
I
of like
watching
it's
them,
interesting. I didn't discount like, oh man, but I'm not going to be able to be amongst the people and like really be with them as they progress in their acting career and stuff, and like that's going to be sad for me. I think the frustrating part in the escape room business was we tried to build a lot of tech and like have like tech experiences where like doors fling open and like flashlights and all that stuff, and people are pretty rough on rooms because they're trying to figure out puzzles and stuff, and so there's a lot of breakage.
Right.
And if you have a lot of expensive stuff to try to have high production value, you're constantly trying to fix stuff, and then if it doesn't work exactly how it's supposed to, so it has to be like massively durable, and you're fixing a lot of stuff, and when things are broken in an experience like that, customers get pissed. And it's like, and you're dealing, that's what I learned in the trampoline, like in that business, when you're dealing with like kids' birthday parties, like you're dealing at a very low ticket value, but like very high emotion and like high expectation of the customer for a very low ticket price of like, you ruined my kid's 7-year-old birthday. Like, I only paid you $250, but this should be like Disney World. And I'm like, I don't really like you people.
No,
like,
that sounds stressful. Dude, I went to one escape room in Seoul, Korea. It cost, I think, $100 to get into it. It was expensive, but there was trap doors, separate rooms, like hallways you would have to crawl through. It was the most amazing production I've ever seen in my life. And I thought, gee, this is cool, but I have one big concern about it. Is the escape room industry just a flash in the pan? Is it dying out, or is it going strong? What do you think?
There's starting in 2019, there started to be more escape room closures than escape room openings. So like the industry, I think that whole family entertainment industry, trampoline parks, escape room, I think it's matured, right? And I think there will be like more and more flight to quality. Like I think that the high quality ones will stick around, and most people that started it in 2015, 2016, I think that there will be a continual decline in like, and the hard thing about the escape room business particularly is like if you go and have a bad escape room experience at someone else's escape room, it kind of like ruins the, like you're like, escape rooms are stupid, like carte blanche, like
Yep.
I don't want to go anymore.
But if you see a bad movie, you're going to go to the movies.
Yeah. And the other problem is, in order to have an experience like the one that you had in Korea, like you can't really do it in the US because fire code is so much more stringent here than it is in Asia and Eastern Europe, where a lot of these things took off. And so like it became harder and harder to make experiences cool enough, but also pass city permitting. And so we were just like, what are we doing? Like, let's get out while the getting's good. And before we have to start flipping these rooms and incur a bunch of, new expenses that'll show
That makes sense. I get
on the
that.
financials.
Okay, I have first idea. I want to pitch to you, Raleigh, because I feel like this can kind of go that direction, right? So we like to pitch weird ideas about businesses. I think this idea would be super fun to run, and I do think it'll go somewhere, but I also think it might be a flash in the pan, but it'll be good profit right now for the next 5 years. I think it should just be a VR warehouse. I've said this before, but I think it's kind of taking the space of the escape room where you just buy 10 headsets or maybe 20, and you can have people play like live Call of Duty with zombies, that style of a game with their best friends, charge $50 a play or whatever you want to charge. Do you think that's a good business, bad business? What do you think?
I know that it is a bad business.
Oh, real? Why?
I second this.
No, dude, I was so excited to do this. This sounded so much fun to me.
No.
I've seen, so there was a business called VR Junkies.
Okay.
They were a franchise business. We've seen a couple of their franchisees go out of business. I think the hard part in that business is a couple things. The biggest problem in entertainment is, and particularly retail entertainment, is most of your revenue is going to come on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday during the day. And when you have a business like that, where it's like your throughput of having a VR headset, like your max capacity, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're going to lose money.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to have the throughput economics in the business in order to only make money basically Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And when you have something like that, that's like that, A, there's high breakage, B, there's a lot of like tech issues of like network. And if you lose power for a couple of days, like there's just a lot of things that happen in that. We actually had VR that we added into the escape room that we tried to do on Groupon. We were going to do it as a lost leader of like, let's just like put the VR thing on Groupon so people could know about the escape room, and we'll lose money on the VR thing. And what people do, the headsets break. They get disgusting because you have a bunch of people in it. People end up breaking the TVs. Like, you put TVs on the wall so that way people who aren't playing can see other people play. Yeah. And people will punch through the TV. And so you're constantly replacing the TVs. It's a low, but the biggest problem is it's a throughput issue on the brick and mortar thing, where you have relatively high upfront fixed costs on a monthly basis, basically in your rent. And you can't get the throughput that you need on the busy times in order to justify the losses that you get throughout the week.
Oh, well, I'm depressed. I was really excited about this. Screw you, Raleigh.
Kendall, do you agree with me?
Oh my gosh. Like it's not even, I would add to all those existing problems. The other problem is it only appeals to basically me and Dustin and Raleigh. There's like such a skinny window of consumer that's willing to pay the price for a VR experience. Like, it's not my wife, and it's not my kids, and it's not my mom, and it's so constrained. So just the constraints are high, and then the perceived value is cheapened compared to, for example, escape room. So you could do an escape room VR style, and you'll just get a lower revenue per customer because they won't value the physical, tangible work you put into the production. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Even though it can be argued that it's a better method. It could be a better escape room
for sure.
You made it digital.
Yeah.
but perceived value is not there. So
there was a business called The Void that instead of doing the VR, like the VR junkie, where you're all kind of connected into headsets and playing a video game or whatever, they tried to make it massively high production value, where these stages cost like $1 to $2 million to put in.
Oh.
And the headset follows you and you traverse through a track. And so like you can feel like wind coming at you, like when you're on the cliff. And, you know, they tried to kind of activate some more experiences like that. And they raised a bunch of money, and I don't know if they fully shut down, but like,
who funds that? That's crazy.
This was back in 2017, 2018, where it was like,
but still.
They had licensing agreements with some big IP properties like Disney, and they would go into big footprints like Madame Tussauds and New York City, and like and anyway, they had
good
it's
shot.
Just a through
they gave it a good shot.
It's a throughput issue, massively expensive.
Okay, if I was in Vegas, I think it might work. Think about it.
That's where the Void. That's where the Void had Vegas. Those type of things. Okay. You're fighting against in that scenario. You're just fighting against the breakage, like how often these things break down, what the throughput looks like.
Yeah.
And then in Vegas, you know, in Utah, you're paying $25 a foot. In Vegas, you're paying $150 a foot in terms of your fixed cost,
but if you can triple revenue. You've already built this thing. If you can triple revenue per customer by giving everybody 2 drinks, you've probably septupled profit per customer. You probably just profit per customer is now through the roof, and fun per customer is way higher. You're gonna have to have janitorial staff for the puke, but you know, are we close?
What I learned in the entertainment business in general, because my grandparents were one of the first people to do a water park in Orlando before Disney got there.
Oh, cool.
And so I've been around, exposed to kind of entertainment, going after the entertainment dollar of somebody for a long time. And what you learn in the entertainment business is that it is a capital expenditure driven business, because it's driven by the novelty of something. And so there's not something, it doesn't compound like other businesses. Like you have to constantly set aside the free cash flow that you earn in order to make sure that you have the capital necessary to put a new attraction in and to bring the next wave of people in to do it when you're going after the entertainment dollar. Because like, you know, you're going after novelty, and you know, you have to continue to innovate and iterate and fund it.
Which is why Disney's primarily an IP business, and their parks take that IP and make a lot of revenue out of it, and they make profit at their scale. But like, nobody wants to compete with them for those problems. Like, they don't have their IP, and they're not making money and selling little stuffed plush toys. Because nobody's going to buy a random plush toy, but if it's Winnie the Pooh, like my wife and I will spring for that for our kids. So I have a business to pitch you that is a totally 180 from this angle. I'm thinking about doing this, so I'm not joking. Like, this is actually maybe the next phase of something we'll do at our business. We kind of want to do brand renovations for acquisitions that fell through. So if an acquisition fell through, our contact would be the broker themselves, because they're typically commission based, and they're sad that the transaction fell through, but they also know all the reasons why. So our thought was, let's have somebody who can talk the talk and understands it, but also understands what it takes to modernize a brand, give it a facelift, put new production in, give it a new website, go hit all the social, give it a rising tide of content, maybe do a small like media acquisition to complement the brand. We could do all that in probably a 6-month period in our normal, because we have these services companies, which is kind of the backbone of the other things we get to build. So if we've got the SEO, we've got the production company, we've got the like website builders and the devs and the design. We've got all that stuff, and we've got the strategy. My thought with my guy who has a big private equity background on our staff It's like, man, what if you just call the brokers and we'll do it for upside only, because we can fund all these expensive services that typically that owner has been resisting for the last 5 years, or as the world modernizes. It's very expensive. If they were to pay us MSRP to do all that stuff for them, I mean, they'd be dropping $100K just to start. And then it could become infinitely expensive if they're wrong, if they're bad at branding, if they decided 6 months in they didn't want their tech stack to work this way. So do you think there's an opportunity there? All right. It's a big enough world. I'm not afraid to give away the tactic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So give me an example. So would you focus on a particular industry or just across the board?
Yeah.
If I have a sushi restaurant.
So the first criteria would be something that the broker actually had a buyer for, and it actually fell through. So we already know there was willing party on both sides, and the business mechanics were sellable. Otherwise, the broker didn't waste their time. So we've already filtered it down, unless it's a really shitty broker. But let's say the broker's been in the business for 10 years or 20 years. They did their preliminary underwriting. They thought this thing would sell. And what has happened, and maybe I'm making up this story in my head, but I can think of a few transactions like this. What happened was the seller thought they were going to get, let's say a 3x multiple, and the buyer wanted to offer a 1.2 multiple. And they go all the way through the process because the broker's really good at getting it through the process. And then they just can't stomach the price separation's too big. Well, the reason why it wasn't worth 3x is because the charts aren't up and to the right. You're buying a stabilized free cash flow business with some issues that you're going to clean up after acquisition, and the operator wants out. But the operator can't sell for that price. It doesn't make sense. In another year and a half, they'll have that much money. So I'm just thinking about those transactions, and specifically maybe the ones that are, I could care less about the business industry. It's more about, had they been around 5 or more years and stabilized? Are they stabilized? If they are, the chances that they have core mechanics that are marketable in the business, core fulfillment, but not modern marketing to 2023 standards are high.
Sure.
Because most companies don't.
Yeah. And so industry agnostic, and the economics would look like you come in and you say, hey.
We say, hey, for a piece of the deal, we look at the numbers, right? And for the piece of the deal, and we could do it as a loan against the sale. So we could do like loan plus upside against the sale or whatever. We would only do it, let's say this would have sold for $3 million, but the offer came in at 1.2. There's in theory, there should be at least $1 million, if not 1.8 of gap to close there on the exit price that we're going to go do the work to, and the broker is going to tell us more honestly than the seller what work needs to be done. So we're going to take our due diligence from the broker, not from the seller. And the broker is going to convince the seller to let us do our thing.
Yeah. I think you could find people that would take you up on that offer. Okay. I think if I were in your position, I think the hard part is I don't like the cash conversion cycle, because even if it's reduced cost or you're doing you're taking so much of that upfront risk in form of your time and labor. I think it would probably make it. I think it would. So that would just be my worry, right? It's such a long plot twist. I love plot twists.
I've got investors ready to take the professional valuation that already has been made, analyze it, and trust us with the renovation. And this is a house flip, right? But we're doing it with a business. We're going to go renovate a fixer upper. that already has an
Yeah.
asset market value, which is normally the problem with a business. So we're actually
Right.
going, now that it's been professionally appraised, and now that a
Mm-hmm.
buyer's shown interest, maybe 6 buyers showed interest and no transaction happened, and we know why. If
Sure.
the why was, we don't have organic SEO, we don't have a predictable, customer acquisition cost on Facebook or Google clicks, we don't have any type of like influencer strategy going, we don't have a strong presence on LinkedIn. There's all these things that could be buttoned up for most businesses.
Yeah.
And those of us in that industry, we're like looking around and we're like, why isn't everybody doing this? It's not crazy hard, but it is crazy sustainably profitable.
Yeah.
I feel like our private investors would then go, cool, yeah, I'll kick in the cash to cover labor for 6 months, and it's a 180-day time window. I'm not proposing a 2-year thing or a thing that infinitely could bleed. I'm
It'd have to
proposing
be more
a
than
project.
180 days. Yeah, it'd have to be a lot. Keep
I
going.
think we can do it in 6. I think we can do it in 6 months. SEO won't get to where you want it to be in 6 months, but the other stuff can.
Yeah.
And the buyer oftentimes is buying on the bet that those things will continue as the charts show, because they have other synergistic reasons why they're buying it. Really, they just need to justify a price,
Sure.
right? And this trend, we set a new trend, right? It's doing this, and we just kind of make that angle a little steeper.
Right. I think it.
Digital
I think
businesses primarily, probably.
Yeah, I think as you start refining kind of like who it really works for and where the juice is worth the squeeze, my bet is you. I think the psychology of someone who has listed their business with a broker is not great. not a great
Please expound.
I think that they are ready to be done. They are ready to get a check. They are, and particularly the psychology of that. I think it's just so much better. I think that you could offer that exact same service and charge it to a specific entrepreneur that is still excited about growth and willing to pay up front for the work that y'all are going to do with a couple case studies, that you get so much better economics in that scenario. That's so much more predictable, that you can build scale and, build a team around doing that process,
Aren't they
or
just
sell an
paying us?
information.
How are we making upside on that?
Say that again.
So you're saying that they would just pay us, but like, how are we getting upside out of that? Just services?
I think you
I
could.
don't want services markups anymore, man.
It's
It's so hard. Service is so hard. I want more
look
leverage.
at something like you could look at something like acquisition.com, right? Alex Hormozy, right?
Right.
What they do is they do a very siloed service that helps you scale your phone teams, and taking you from $3 million of revenue to $10 million of revenue.
Yeah.
And they the way that they make their money is it's 15% of revenue for them to offer that service.
Ongoing.
And I don't know what the breakup fee, I don't know what the breakup clauses are, or how you get yourself out of that thing. So I think that's
we could
so
probably
much
charge
better.
it to percentage of revenue in the same structure I'm proposing. We can probably get both. We could probably get a piece of the exit and get a piece of revenue, right? Because we're gonna.
I mean, I think, particularly if you're saying, okay, if this is your revenue floor, that if this is where you're at right now, let us do this work, and we'll be 50-50 partners on everything that we bring to the table over and above where your business is already at. Right.
And we want 10% of the sale.
Sure. Yeah. I guess that's 10%. Yeah. I mean, you could say, I would, if it fell apart because it was valued at one.
Yeah, 30% of the sale above what you got offered last time.
Above what the valuation was at, right? If it was at the 1.2,
like
we're going to take 30% of everything that we bring you on top of that, and we'll be
just
revenue
invoice me
partners.
for the consulting session. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly right. And so, like, I think this is what we found in Deal Maven, right? Is like on Deal Maven, we tried to build a software version for it, and we realized that we kind of needed to get involved on these partial acquisitions in order to help people through because they just needed help doing it.
Right.
And so like we kind of like backed ourselves into becoming kind of this brokerage service, and I shut it down because I'm just like I'm not hungry enough anymore to
be
like
everyone's
do the
consultant.
work. Do the work in the hope of, helping somebody with a transaction and
That
like,
you don't own.
and having to, that I can't control both and like trying to be an intermediary. Like I've made enough money to know that I don't want to make money that way anymore.
Right.
And I even had people willing to do the brokerage stuff. Like I had like the guy that wanted to do it, and I was just like, I'm not doing it. Like if this is the way that this thing grows, I'm going to kill it right now because it's just not worth it to me. And so I think that you can, if you have all of those people, all of those service providers, all of the kind of people that have the expertise to do it, I think
we do. Yeah.
I think you get a much better client or partner in that deal with someone who's excited about the growth than the psychology of someone who's just had a deal fall through and is like checked out with being like, I just think it's a bad customer, but I think that you can catch them at a different stage of the process where they're excited about the growth of it.
We are doing those as well, but those are usually tech entrepreneurs who are like technical skill set with bad go-to-market chops.
Sure.
Right. And so they built a good thing. They're post-revenue, post-validation. And the same thing, then we like our private investors understand how this creates margin in the actual deal. And so our money gets to go farther because we'll get co-investment to help us go do this deal longer and giving us time to do it well. So we can go pay all the services companies and they can go in and treat this thing like a client. But really we're doing it for the upside. We're not really making a profit month to month. It works better there, but what I'm trying to do is shorten the time horizon to that 6 to 9 month time. That's what I'm searching for, is like, how do we, like, we can bat singles and we have been, and we'll keep doing it. But how do I get 3 plates deep? I want to swing and I want to get to third base like this year on this deal and then move on. Like not everything has to be a grand slam.
One way that I've found, I think one way to do it, and the way that I'm currently trying to do it, is finding the businesses. I think with a little bit of capital, like with a little bit of capital investment into that same business that had the deal fall through. Right. I think it's so much easier to go to that person and say, we're gonna put $100,000, $200,000 that you're going to be able to take off of the table, and we're going to invest in. We're going to be your growth equity partner, and we're going to do it just like growth equity, private equity does, where we're getting you right at the stage post product market fit and pre private equity stage, and we're going to invest in your process. And even if some of that investment is you putting $200,000 in to take $100,000 into like the services that you're
pay the services
providing
providers.
I think that and then you own real equity in the business.
Thank you for explaining our business model without knowing it. That's actually what we do. That's
oh really?
So we've done that 4 times now, and we're about to close on another. We'll see. But on this one, we're buying his next 6 months of cash flow to give it a test and kick the tires before we put in more.
I'm curious, what'd you choose?
Cash flow.
Can you say what you chose, or is it before you're able to?
Do you mean the business? What do you mean?
Yeah. You just said you're about to close on another deal that you're going to get 6 months.
Because it's all non-disclosure stuff. I shouldn't say it and then put it on TikTok.
Can you just say things that rhyme with it?
no, but it's a service it's a service similar to one aspect of Y Combinator. So it's like entrepreneurs are the customer. Y Combinator does 20 things, but it's one of the 20 things they do. And it was just a developer.
It's funny because what you do is
their
similar to Y
system.
Combinator, so that kind of plays. It's synergistic in a good way.
I disagree, but I see where you're coming
You
from.
disagree? No. You invest in companies by Combinator. Yeah, keep going.
They're just yeah.
I mean, they're the juggernaut.
A certain model that we're not. So I think more like acquisition, discounted cash flow, assets today, less speculative on angel investing. I don't like the typical entrepreneur hustle. I respect the people who go for it, but they'll end up being the operators of the businesses we'll acquire is the truth most often. Their startup won't work, but they'll learn so much in the process, then they'll go run a business, which is a little bit my journey. And so like I'm here operating a business because some of my past failures were it's hard to go from 0 to 1. It's freaking hard with no resources.
Yeah.
Bro,
so,
can I interrupt you real fast? I want to go back into your business idea there. So you go into business, you flip them, you make them better, and then you go to them out there. Yep. I think it could work. I have a huge concern though, because you're saying you're going to shop the businesses that they were trying to get acquired, but none of their deals went through, right? Which means number one, they're already a little bit like temperamental, right? For some reason it didn't go through, and that could play into the one thing that you need. So if you want to make a business grow up, you kind of need autonomy, because I think a lot of those people in that stage, they're like, no, this is my brand. This is what I sound like. This is all this. And you're like, yes, I know. That got you to 1 million or 2 million, but you need to get to 10. And in order to do that, you need to get out of the way. It's founder syndrome, right? So I think you're going to run into that problem. And so if you can do it in a way where it says, hey, we get all control for 6 months, and I think you're going to have a hard time with that, because
nobody's going to give us that.
Like that.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. That'll be a common scenario if we did this. So I guess my calculus has been, but we only need like 3 of these a year. We don't need a crazy amount. So we're filtering those ones out, and we would be relying on the broker to sniff out a lot of that bullshit we would already have to deal with. Because again, in the model I proposed, they're not going to get any money out of it. The broker's not going to get anything unless this thing goes back to market. So I don't know. I'll let you know if we test it. On the business we're hoping to buy right now, the deal to just buy their free cash flow, their next 6 months of free cash flow, is like so cheap for us, and he gets a check now for a business that's flatlined, or if not declining a little. But we see other asset value. We want it for other synergistic reasons. And so we can't really value the business on any of its growth trend, but he's asking too much for something that doesn't grow or pay for itself. So we're like, well, let's see if we can make it pay for itself. So let's sign this we have an option. We have an exclusive option to buy the whole business over the next 6 months. If our tests, which would mostly be cost per click tests, and maybe some video, maybe some email to his existing customer base, some of the things that we need to know, but it doesn't really fit in a due diligence period either, because like he wouldn't give us the keys to the kingdom and all his passwords if it's just due diligence. So this gives us a phase 1, and if it doesn't work, he got stabilized money for the next 6 months, and then we're out. And we probably improved his business like better than he could as a solo developer. So,
how did you find that deal?
That one was microacquire. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Like, was it my platform?
Oh yeah. Did you find that on mine? No.
Yeah. No, we did kick some tires of media. What is it? Media Acquire?
Media Acquire. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Raleigh's. So we did find some there, and we're going to be regular shoppers there because I really believe in that strategy. So I really believe the business of 2030 is definitely a content heavy. You own the distribution lines of your brand. Yeah. Which means you need to be on multiple social media platforms so that you're not shut down. You need to have an email list. You want to be tweeting regularly. You need to do a podcast. You need to whatever. So this this is the new marketing, and it has a face, and the leaders who don't want to be out in front and be transparent and straightforward, but they're more leading from the back, are going to have a hard time adapting to this new normal. So I think there's going to be a big disruption of just businesses run by personalities that aren't used to being on camera. And the businesses that are run by people who people like will drive more revenue. People like buying from people they like. I buy things from people I like all the time.
Yeah, you see like Logan Paul, Prime, doing Prime, like that's like an easy one. Mr. Beast Burger, like that it has very little to do with the quality of the burger of Mr. Beast versus Five Guys. But A, there's massive distribution and awareness, and B, they just want to buy from people that they like. And
do you listen to Sam Parr?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on his last episode, he plugged marathonranch.com, which is his Airbnb. Yeah. And a bunch of people are going to go book it because they want to buy from Sam, right?
Yeah, totally.
It has nothing to do with, HubSpot, which is the derivative business that episode gets aired under. And I think that principle right now, it's a fallacy to say that's the business model of influencers. I think the business model of everyone in the future is to be influential. And so it's easier to get somebody on camera with good production than it is to change out your whole executive team. So this is going to continue to go, right? Like that's going to continue to happen. But if we orient ourselves to browse media acquire on a regular basis, say, oh, what other distribution lines of media could we own, like Disney? That's the best example because it's been around for so long.
Dude, you know what? Like, this sounds really pretty easy to do, in my opinion, though. Just because the tools are so readily available, we have everything from Chat GPT to AI branding to like video content shooting. You could even take this. You're talking about a really nice big model. You could take it, shrink it down, go find a Shopify store that you think, that could blow up, and literally just do it for them, and it would actually work. I do think it would work. You could do it you could do that with less than 10 grand. In fact,
you mean like be the face of it?
Just like call up your Aunt Sally over there who's selling handmade silver rings or whatever she's doing, and say, hey, you're doing a great job. Can I just make you blow up and let's just partner it here on out. And she'll be like, that's great. I don't know how to use a computer. And you could say, that's great. I don't know how to do whatever the hell you're doing. So, and then you just make it happen.
So my wife has like probably 100,000 followers on Instagram and kind of across a couple different platforms. And she had cancer over the past year. And so she's seen me acquire companies, and I don't really have a massive media distribution channel myself as kind of a personal brand, but working on it. And so she's seen me do that. And so what she did, she gets all these people that ask her through the cancer process, you lose your hair, your eyebrows, your eyelashes, all these things. And so she found this girl that had a business called Flutter Junkies, that she was an eyelash esthetician, whatever. And so she built this great product, this great little e-com business. It was a great product, but there was no distribution for the product, so she spent all this money building out this amazing eyelash serum to do these glue-on eyelashes that people use. And so my wife bought 49% of her company for like less than $5,000.
The influencer for her,
and she's going to be the face of it, because it's basically, it's done like a couple $1,000s in revenue before she ever got my wife involved, and she's been trying to get it. She's a great operator. She can source the product really well.
Dude, when did this happen?
She'll do all of the operational work.
This is a great product, a great idea, and your wife's perfect for this. When did it happen?
In the past 3 months, I'm supposed to be looking at the operating agreement right now.
So it's getting, is it getting traction? Like, is it working? She's probably driven $5,000 of revenue to it. Like, she's pushed it a couple times on her social channels. Yeah.
And
our community would love to look at the operating agreement. Just pull it up and screen share.
Can you tell me what it's called? I kind of want to look up the name of the product right now, if you don't mind.
It's called Flutter Junkies. Flutter
while he's looking that
junkies.
up, so my sister-in-law is a trichologist.
Got
Do you know
it.
what that is?
No.
So a trichologist is a hair loss specialist. It's a
Oh.
licensed hair loss specialist. There are like a handful. I mean, we're talking like less than 20 in California. And she used to be a high-end, salon, owned like a boutique. And
Sure.
she would do like high-end hair of all shapes and sizes. And when she got into extensions, which is where the real revenue was,
This is super
it was
good.
the derivative of women who had hair loss from medical reasons that were the highest revenue customers. And my sister-in-law is also a big bleeding heart. So it was like the intersection of revenue and meaning for her. So what she's done is she got extra trained to be a hair loss specialist for cancer patients for the purpose of actually being able to separate the reason why you specifically are losing hair so that you can recommend the regrowth process. In the meantime, here are the extensions that you can use that won't damage what you do have, which are incredibly expensive.
For sure.
But to that person in that season of life, it might be some of the only hope they can cling to. So
Totally.
I hope your wife's doing well. Is she in remission or like
She's in remission. Just out there slinging business deals now. You know what I mean?
That's
Dude,
so amazing.
That's making lemonade out of lemons. Is that what it is?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, if she wants another product to sell, Janelle and her should make a deal,
so
and she
funny.
go right there with the eyelashes.
Dude, I'm looking at it
totally.
right now. I think that's a great idea. I'm so curious, and I want to come back and ask you later, just maybe 6 months down the road. So we should just have you on in 6 months. I want to know what her strategy was and if it was effective or not.
Did it
The
work?
product looks great. I'm looking at it right now. I think it's fantastic. The website's fine. It's all good. Raleigh, can I ask you a few questions? Because you buy businesses or you tell businesses that you don't want to buy them, whatever you want to do. Can you give me just really quick, top of your head, general, like what's a good business to buy? Like, is there any marker you're like, there, buy stuff in that area. Don't touch this. This is bad. Any quick, like, let's say I have, just spin off of that. What do you think?
Typically, just for me, kind of my buy box is typically I like online digital product businesses, courses, info products. I like them because I think it's probably the most mispriced business that's out there. There's not a lot of buyers out there. And even though there's a lot of cash flow that you can generate off of these businesses, you don't have SBA buyers and those type of people that are bringing a bunch of debt. Like debt hasn't really figured out how to value those businesses. And so I think it's the easiest kind of mispriced thing in the market that I see. So that's like, if someone has a course, if someone has a certification, I try to find someone who has a course and try to turn it into a certification. So I bought a business that taught
I like that.
that teaches pharmacists how to become genetic testers. And she was selling it as a course, and I bought 2/3 of the business. I kept the operator in, and we turned it from a course into a certification. So instead of just here's the course, here's the end of it, you're certified as a genetic tester, and you keep your certification up, and we'll send you leads of people that are interested in genetic testing. And so online businesses is kind of very interested because there's not a lot of competition. And then for me, I think very asset heavy businesses, brick and mortar, manufacturing, all of those things are kind of my hell no, because they're difficult to run. Like they're valued off of EBITDA, and I think this gets a little technical, but I think EBITDA is the wrong metric to use on those, because I think depreciation can be a real expense in those businesses that you're ultimately going to have to pay for, but you're not getting the value off of it in terms of how it gets valued. And also it's just it's such a natural, like brick and mortar businesses have such a natural constraint to scale with them, and because you have to go to a new location and build a new location in order to get it done, and sign leases with landlords and personal guarantees. And the richest guy that I know that I'm like really good friends with, you know, his deal criteria is you only do deals that if you're right, you get rich. And if you're wrong, you don't go broke. And what I've found is that in a lot of retail businesses or manufacturing businesses, if you're right, you do okay. And if you're wrong, you lose everything. And so it's like backwards on the criteria completely.
On the formula.
That's interesting.
And versus online businesses like certifications, all those type of things, like you can buy something for 25, 50 grand or whatever that scales to your version of like not a massive bet. And if you're right, you can make a great return on your money. And if you're wrong, typically the only way to really go broke is if you really over leverage on something, and you can't get leverage on those businesses even if you wanted to. So it's really hard to go broke on them. You can't lose everything.
That's pretty awesome.
They won't loan it to you.
How many? Okay, so you've purchased several like online businesses at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you give me like an average? Like on average, out of 10, 2 of them are pretty successful, 3 of them cash flow, 2 of them tank. What does it look like?
I haven't had of anything that I've bought. I've never had one tank. I've had things tank that I've started from scratch that I thought were great ideas that I was in love with.
High five to that.
Yeah, I relate to that. I relate to that one a lot.
but anything that I've acquired, I've had angel anything that I own, that I personally own, like at least 25% of the business on, like those have have always generated at least 30% annual returns on my investment on them. If I've had,
is that how you think about it? Do you think about it in annualized yield?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I mean, if I'm giving more than 5 hours a week, then I have a different, I think more in terms of how much time and I want to make more than
for time.
I want to make more than 30% on my money on something that I'm putting a lot of time into. But if it's a meeting a month and what the distribution, I think in terms of, I think in terms of just what did I get as a distribution this month from this company? I don't give a shit about whether the equity appreciated or it got marked to market on some new investor that came in on all this shit. Like you can't feed your family with
Silicon
equity
Valley
appreciation. Yeah. and so I think in terms of monthly or quarterly,
but you can pay taxes on it.
Yeah, that's right. You can
you can pay taxes on the markup that the VC. Gosh, the incentives are in the wrong place for that whole industry.
Yeah, I've had plenty of venture investments that have gone to zero, plenty of my own ideas that have gone to zero. But when I've bought in and bought a meaningful stake in a business like that's been operating for 2 or 3 years, like it's just so hard for them to go to zero unless you unless you bring too much debt to the table, or you're changing the capital stack in a way that puts the business in jeopardy. And so those have all done well for me.
Okay, that's good to know. I like that. Dude, I have several more questions. Actually, not a lot, but Kendall, do you have any more questions first?
Sorry, that wasn't like
No, that's
fire.
exactly what I wanted. It's good. Now
we're an hour deep, so what's the spiciest way to land this ship? I wish...
What can go viral?
What can go viral?
What can we get the most?
Yeah, we can pick on Dave Ramsey again.
That's
we
so
did.
Funny. Here, I'll
just
get you.
Like Dave Ramsey's an idiot, and it goes viral, and then we get followers.
What does go viral is if you give people options. So, like, if we were to sit here and say, "All right, guys, we're choosing between these 3 businesses. Which one do you want us to buy?" And we're gonna buy whatever you say. Like that would work. But it just doesn't. It doesn't.
Here's a question I have for you. You talk a lot about partial acquisition, but people don't. How is a partial acquisition different than just writing an angel check? If you're not getting controlling interest in the company, what's the difference between I invested 20% of this thing versus I bought 20% of this thing as a partial with the intent or hope to buy more? How do you keep yourself safe?
I think. Well, there's 2 things. There's 2 answers to that. One is the stage of the business. if it's a pre-revenue business, pre-product market fit business,
Yeah.
something that isn't
Leave it to
profitable,
San Francisco. Yeah.
then I wouldn't call it a part. That doesn't fit like what I kind of talk about
That's
in
an
terms of
angel
partial
investment.
acquisitions.
Yeah.
I'm usually with partial acquisitions, I'm not trying to solve a capital issue of the business. I'm trying to solve, it's usually a founder that is stuck at some level, whatever that level is, and doesn't know how to get to the next level. And
So
they
buy
typically
some and help them.
they're typically owning 100% of the equity at that stage. And what I'm saying is you shouldn't own all. It's better to own less than all of a business that is back on a growth trajectory and is generating free cash flow than it is to own 100% of a stagnant to slightly declining business.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't buy 20%, owning 20% of an idea that you're putting a bunch of capital into isn't interesting to me. So I think the stage of the company is kind of the first thing that I would differentiate from a partial owning, 20% of it versus owning 20% of a pitch deck, PDF idea business plan, which is worth zero. And the second thing is,
I love that so much.
I mean, they're at least worth like $2,000. They put a lot of work into that deck.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
worth $2,000.
I pay
totally
$1,000
disagree.
for my
No,
fiber.
not even a little bit. No. No, give me.
I do.
Proof
If the guy
product-
is going to actually
Yeah,
go
but
work.
there's a billion ideas about that.
You know
I
how
mean, that's our
expensive it is
whole
to hire?
podcast is just to shoot out ideas. Give me an idea. That's great. I don't give a shit. Show me that somebody wants to buy your idea, and
Show
then
me.
let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, and then the second thing is with owning 20 or 30%, so I actually just did a video on this that I don't think is out yet. That if you've ever watched The Prophet, Marcus Lemonis,
I love
where he
Marcus.
goes
Like
in
my favorite person.
and he buys like wineries and like kind of like mostly shitty businesses, right? He'll say, I own whatever the cut is, 20, 30%, but I'm 100% in control, right? That's his like line that he's always controlling it. Like
for the next 4 weeks.
For the next whatever, right? So like you can always split the equity, right? The equity in a business is driven by the economics of it, right? Which is typically what people are thinking about with equity. And then there's also the control aspect of equity. And you can own 20% of the economics of a company and completely control it,
power.
right? And so I'll always have control. I'll always have control over certain things like tax distributions, the way money gets distributed, increases in salaries. I always just want to make sure that
you
there's no way
out the distribution money accounting side
from
operation.
Yeah.
In your
agreements. And an operating agreement, it's basically just delineating. There are certain things that can be done with a majority of members. There are certain things that require all of the members to agree in order to do them, and just delineating out what those decisions look like.
But you're also making that clear in expectations verbally. You're meeting with the operator, and you're making it extremely clear.
The big thing is I just don't want a situation where me and the operator have disparate outcomes, where they can win while I lose. Right? Because I bought into their company. They decide, you know what? I used to make $100,000 a year, and now I want to make $400,000 a year. And because I own 75% of the company and you're my minority partner,
raise my salary.
I'm just doing it. Right. And so there on partials, there's a little bit more diligence in terms of like who the operator is than in a typical like full acquisition. But, that's the price. That's the extra layer that I do, because I want to make sure that I can do 10 deals in a year, which means that I can't be in the org chart, right? And I don't want to be responsible for the org chart. And I want to be there as a supporter to the person who's running the business. So I got to make sure that I like them, that I trust them, that they're going to do the right thing. And I'm not perfect at that. You can't do a good deal with a bad person, right? And even if the operating agreement is ironclad, as ironclad as it can be, like, if somebody in a business that I own is skimming $5,000 a month, like off of, 250 grand a month in revenue, like it'll be pretty hard for me to catch it, like it's going to take time. I may not catch it for a couple of years. And so I like the pharmacy business is a perfect example of like, she's the most awesome, like she has advanced degrees, right? Which shows just some level of integrity, hopefully, diligence, right? She has licensing and certifications that, that she could lose if she was being dishonest in something. And she's just a total badass. Like she just crushes it. And it's like, I'm like, my thing, I'm like, how can I find 30 of these? Right.
Yeah. Right.
Like I could, and so that's how I think it's different than just investing, is because I'm buying in with the expectation. I'm buying in with the expectation that I'm going to work in this business and provide strategic value. And every angel investment that I've ever done, at the closing room, they're like, oh, could you introduce me to this person, or could you help in this and this and this way? And like, I'll do it. But like, I expect to not hear from them. You know what I mean? And I expect to not do anything because I don't
have to chase down people for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like my money is why I'm at this table, not my brain or anything else. You know what I mean? And partial.
Do you do brain deals where your money's not the reason why you're at the table, but your advice or your, I'm a board member here, not because I bought in, but because I'm here to tell you what to do.
Where I bring no money?
I mean, just the spirit of it. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like,
do you operate at all?
I'm not really asking, do you operate? I'm asking, do you sit as a strategic advisor in exchange for equity?
I've done those before, and I like them less. Like I've done some where I put some money in and I'll get a discounted value to the round because I'm going to bring some legal help or some operational help, so I get discounts. What I've found is like, if I own 0.5% of something or 1% of something or 2% of something, I just don't care. Like,
it's that whole Shark Tank. I don't get out of bed for less than 5%.
Totally. And like, it's a total dick thing to say, but it's just true.
It's kind of unfortunately.
I don't want 1/20th of your like mediocre thing, but I might want like 40% of your mediocre thing.
Yeah, totally. And also those types of businesses tend to be SaaS businesses and kind of like,
high potential.
very, high potential, but low actual, like very long time horizon stuff, like 10 years out type stuff. And the way that I think, for better or worse, is just like, what did I make this month? And like, I don't care about paper value. I don't care about owning 2% of $100 million. I just don't. I try to care. I just don't. And so like, what I've actually done multiple times is people have given me something like 5%, like to help them and like be in an advisory role. And there were 3 or 4 of those deals. And in each of them, I've actually like told them like, cut me down to 1% because like, I'd rather you have the space in the capital stack to like really bring somebody. Cause like, I'm not going to go to the board meeting prepped with whatever. Like I'm just not going to do it.
Okay. I've got one last question. I like that. Just for the average listener out there, if you had a 9-to-5 job right now and you hated it, how would you get out of it and get to a better lifestyle?
I like that question.
Not
how should they, how would you? If you were working your law job, again.
If I woke up tomorrow at a law firm job?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Given everything you know now, what would you do?
Oh, I know what I know now?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Okay, let's say you can learn it. Like, it can't be like some, I know about this index fund and that's going to change it. Something you can learn.
I think I would probably go one of 2 options. One option would be I would probably try to find a business for sale on whatever marketplace, biz, buy, sell, micro acquire, something, whatever. I would try to get the biggest business possible that I had some background in and go to people and try to get investors to help me buy it. I would try to find something that is bankable. So it would need to be in business for at least 3 or 4 years. Investors plus debt. Because if I'm working at a job and I have a relatively low net worth, the personal guarantee is not massively scary to me because you can take all of my Camry that I own, whatever. and the quality. I would try to optimize for the highest quality business that I could possibly buy. Not the
Convince
cheapest.
somebody
not
to
the
sell to you.
Yeah, and I would bring debt. I would bring debt, and I would try to raise the money for the down payment and some of the working capital. That's one path. And I would step in as the CEO of that business. So I would need to find something where the story would make sense, right? If I was a lawyer doing M&A stuff, I would try to find a business that I had some exposure to, that an investor knows that I'm going to be able to run this thing. That would be one potential path. And the other path that I would do is I would probably, this is what I told my brother-in-law, who's a lawyer right now, trying to figure out how to get out, is I would try to buy media assets that I could either flip, because I think that they're not that hard to flip, because I've done it like without even trying to really. And I would either try to flip media assets, so I would reach out to someone with an Instagram account and say, hey, are you willing, would you be open to sale or partnership on this media channel? And some percentage of them would say yes. And then I'd say, what price will you take? And they say 10 grand. And then I would try to find somebody that will buy it for 20 grand and take the difference. Or I would try to find a media. Say again?
Before closing?
Yeah. I mean, we literally just did this. Like the guy that runs MediaAcquire, like I had the buyer wire us the money, and then I wired it to the seller. And so like
Dustin, this is your new homework project. Really I think this is how Dustin should make money.
Oh, that's
and we gave the login credentials to the buyer and the cash to the seller. So we basically wholesaled it, but neither party ever like knew about it, because like otherwise, how do you get the cash to you?
Yeah,
like
this is huge in real estate, and
huge in real estate.
And I personally love real estate and hate this part of the industry. I generally have a bent against brokerage stuff for a couple of reasons. It squeezes things unnecessarily, and there's more snakes in the area than is worth giving your life to. But in what you're talking about, not a lot of snakes here. This is a lot cleaner. And a lot of the people who've gone to like the guru seminars of pay to go to Las Vegas to like drink a little and then talk to a mastermind coach, and they tell themselves, I'm going to go make money wholesaling like these guys do. They're going to go work their asses off doing shitty work, feeling bad about the lies they're concealing. And in the same time doing this in the media industry with micro assets, you could probably get 6 deals done per one real estate wholesale deal.
My wife reached out to one channel. I'm trying to find where my camera is. One channel. The channel she said, would you be open to sell? They said, yes, we're open to sell. We want $2,500 for it. And
how many followers?
And
how big of an influence?
It had 150,000
was it a pretty niche
followers.
Industry, or was it pretty big?
It was like religiously based. Okay. You know, 150,000 followers.
Why would they like sell? 3 million. They're stressed. They just want
a college kid that like just started it and went viral.
Yeah.
And I found a guy on MediaAcquire that was trying to do that, wanted Christian-based stuff.
Yep.
And so we said, do you want this channel for $5,000? He said, of course I want this channel for $5,000. He sent us the $5,000. I probably could have sold it to him for 10 grand, right? But he's my buddy. And so like,
sure,
whatever.
No, $5,000's great. And you did all the value in,
Yeah, we made sure that the transfer went well. Like transferring these things can be a little dicey, whatever. And so we just did the transfer, made $2,500 off of it was the first message that my wife ever sent, like asking for a media.
Awesome. It was like, it's really funny. And she did it from her influencer account to give credibility.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just her personal account.
Dustin,
and I've
this is Idea Drop's new business
Should
model.
we try it? That would actually
we
work.
barely monetize.
That would be pretty. I don't want to say it would be easy, but I do think it would be easier than a lot
I
of
think it would
ways.
be easy. We're a business show that's incredibly eclectic.
Yeah, we would have instant.
Anyways,
repeatability.
And when you find ones where you don't know where the buyers are on the other side, if you don't want to buy them yourself, you can post it on MediaAcquire.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost anything for a seller. You just be the seller on MediaAcquire, post it, and you're good to go, baby.
Okay, so this show brought to you by MediaAcquire.com. Raleigh has built this thing over the last year, and it is ready to sell you a better TikTok channel. MediaAcquire.com.
That's right.
I love that.
Don't start from scratch.
Don't start
from scratch. Start from scale. That'll be our new tagline.
It's going to be funny when all these influencer accounts used to be like a beautiful woman in her early 20s, and now it's like a man and he's 48 years old, and he's like talking about the same content.
Pivoted.
Just like doing it like it's the same girl, but just like an AI version of her that's like recreated to like
don't mind the
doing
6
the
fingers.
content.
It's just great.
Movio. We can end on this. Movio is AI that you can talk to on like a video call for 2 hours, a script, and then it takes you, and you can type out what you want you to say from there on out after you do the whole script training.
They're
crazy.
close.
It
it's
is crazy.
still shitty, I will say that. But it's they're on the way.
But it's coming
Oh,
very
it's on the way
soon to
so
like
fast.
you won't be able to tell. So for some use
That's
cases
crazy.
you already can't tell. All right, guys, this was really fun. We will give you back your time, Raleigh.
Yeah, dude. Good meeting you, man.